Local history, local culture, local events, your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Oneida County Sheriff Rob Maciel is our guest. We're going to be talking about all kinds of local law enforcement issues and a couple that are state that affect the local territory. But before we do that, we're going to say welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. We're glad to be back here.
Good. Last time you were here, it was a while ago, but the last time you were here, boy, you were very on target with saying this bail reform, which is kind of an oxymoron, bail reform, bill that went into effect was going to really have some effects on us, and it really has.
Yeah, you know, when we were speaking about this the last time we were on, not only what I said on this show, but what sheriffs across New York State were saying, we were being accused of being fearmongers and exaggerators and things of that sort. But literally, what we said was going to happen is happening. And unfortunately, it's happening at a much more alarming rate than we anticipated. People are being released from custody and not being held with bail on major and significant violent charges. They've declassified robbery second as a violent felony, declassified burglary second. So you can break into someone's home and that's no longer a violent crime. You can knock an elderly person down to the ground and take their purse and that's no longer a violent crime. We're seeing people released from jail and within hours recommitting crimes. Just a day or two ago, there was one where an individual was released, a felony DWI offender with a long history, downstate, was released, and within hours he killed somebody else driving a car. So this has to change. This bail reform, it's a failed initiative, and it has to change. We've got to give back we've got to give judges back the authority to measure someone's dangerousness, and if they feel they need to be held, then they need to be held. The state legislature, which I've never seen before, they stripped the powers away from the judicial branch of government here in New York State. And I thought we had to have balance of power with executive and the legislative and judicial, but one branch of government stripped the powers of the other branch.
When did this go into effect?
Went into effect January 1st, but we actually were releasing inmates. When I say we, sheriffs across New York State were releasing unsentenced inmates ahead of schedule because we had to. There was no way that we could, in our case, I think we released about 93 inmates here in Oneida County, but each of those inmates had to appear before court. Their cases had to be reviewed, so all that took time. So mid-December, we were beginning the process because the last week of December, there was no court in session because of the holidays. So all of our inmates had to be out that the law required us to get out. They had to be out by, I think it was like December 23rd. And plus, you know what, we don't want to set them up for failure too. Yes, there were many of them who were dangerous that shouldn't, in my opinion, shouldn't have been released in the community.
In Oneida County, you're talking?
In Oneida County. But at the same time, some of them, we were setting them up for failure. And what I mean by that is we had people in our facility on drug charges. They're addicted to heroin. The families were intentionally not bailing them out because at least when they're with us, I can keep them clean. We were giving them treatment. I guess I get it. It's on a limited basis, but they were getting some treatment. And you know what? We could no longer provide them that treatment. We were forcing them back out. We had mental health inmates who were suffering from mental health issues. And granted, I agree, jail is not the place for them. But there's no longer any mental health facilities. There's very few mental health programs out in the community. There's limited funding for mental health programs. So at least when they were with us, our mental health office was giving them the treatment that they needed. So this is a lot more complicated than it appears on its face.
I was reading something the other day that the leadership in the Senate, New York State Senate, said that they would take another look at this, but in the Assembly, Assemblyman Hasty,
it's the Speaker.
The Speaker said he wants to give this more time to play out.
I don't know how much more time we can give this. People are getting killed. Like I said, the example I just gave you, a person was mowed down, literally mowed down on the street by someone who was drunk, who shouldn't have been on the street. I think you're going to see that change. One of my colleagues, another fellow sheriff in New York State, actually from Washington County, Sheriff Murphy, he started a Facebook page. It's called Repeal Bail Reform, and that within 2 days he had 54,000 followers. Now, I mean, it's far in excess of 100,000 people on this simple Facebook page started by an upstate sheriff. The community is crying for change here. This is not just some small group. I'm talking, this is all walks of life, all parts of this state, and the speaker has to give in here at some point in time. People will continue to die and be in danger as a result of this.
What has it done now for your jail population? Your jail population had been running pretty high.
Yes.
What do you hold up there, 800?
Well, we have 632 beds.
Okay.
If I go back 2 years, we were averaging, our daily average population was like 450, although there were times early on in my tenure that we were above 500. But 450 2 years ago. Then we implemented the centralized arraignment court, where we're doing all arraignments at our place. We're no longer housing minor offenses. This was 2 years ago, sort of our own reform. Our daily population dropped by about 100. We were at about 350. But since this bail reform kicked in, our population is at about 250 to 255. These are numbers that are lower now than they were in the early 90s, late 80s, before the new jail was built.
There's a financial impact for Oneida County there too because of that, yes?
No. Well, not a good one.
Yeah.
The way that the New York State Corrections, the Commission of Corrections, the entity that oversees all jails in New York State, they set our minimum staffing standards. We have to staff a jail as if it were full. And it's a little complicated, but you've been in our facility before. There's various housing units. So to give you an example, in a new part of the jail, there's 8 pods with 56 inmates that are held in each of those pods. That's like 448 cells. But the female unit, for example, there's 56 cells in that unit. If I only have 2 females in that unit, the other 54 cells must remain vacant because I can't put anyone else in there but females. So my point is, this does nothing. I still have to staff the jail with the same amount of correction officers, whether I have 200 inmates in there or 600 inmates in there. So there's not a cost savings at all for us.
Is there, does it open it up for the federal prisoners to come in there, can you make some money there?
No. The reason being is there's less federal inmates now than there ever have been. And again, it's kind of complicated because just the opposite is happening on the other side. Because federal transition takes a lot longer, we're still operating in many cases, when I say we, jails across the country are still operating under the Obama policies because the changes haven't yet caught up yet. So we house less federal inmates, we meaning all jails, we house less federal inmates now than we ever have. So no.
Because that was a revenue producer.
It was. We still have federal inmates, but we're holding numbers as we were in the past couple of years. So there are no more inmates. Now the problem is with all the jails having less inmates in all of them, everybody's marketing their beds, so there's less opportunity for revenue.
When we come back, let's talk about drones. The Oneida County Sheriff is our guest, Rob Maciel. Short break, right back.